All right, I got Sri Kaza on the show. He's a business strategist, small business advocate, and he's the author of the new book, Unconvention, a small business strategy guide. Sri, welcome to the show, brother. Excited to
Hey,
connect
thanks
with
for
you.
having me on, Joel.
Dude, so talk to me. What inspired you to write this book? I love the concept, right? It's like, how do these small business, how are they outperforming these giants, right? That we're so these big corporations. But it's kind of like it's kind of contrarian to think that way. So I guess what made you what brought you what gave you this idea? Like where how are these outliers doing so well?
Yeah, I was running a business called Forward Line. We were doing small business lending, so we did a lot of financial and analytical work to figure out who would survive and who would deserve a loan and who's going to do well. One of the core pieces of what I brought to that company was some advisory work and consulting on how to use the money, right? Understand people's business cases, understand the strategy they were pursuing, and then help them to deploy the capital really well. And so all this made perfect sense to me, having been a McKinsey strategy consultant for many years, working for large companies. Thinking strategically about how you run your business seems like a really good thing for everybody, even if you're small. I think that's true. But what I found out when we were doing our analysis of what happened to post-COVID, who survived and who didn't, trying to go use our data, saying, hey, we had all this great data, quantifiable data about like what a business does, how well it's prioritizing its profit and its growth and its investments versus less explicable strategies. We found a lot of outliers that somehow performed through some of the toughest times, that didn't kind of follow a strategy by the book. It didn't exactly have the best financials. And that just shocked me. And we did a little bit of work. I did a lot of digging, and couldn't get the answer in the data, but I could by just making phone calls and talking to small businesses, even visiting a couple of them. And what I had learned was it's not that they didn't follow strategy, but they made decisions based on a couple of core principles that big businesses couldn't possibly do. So didn't show up in the way we looked at strategy overall. For example, well, I named them three principles, right? I named them positioning, proximity, and purpose. You got to understand these small businesses, the owners have like every role at the company. They're the CEO, they're the accountant, they're the head of HR, they're the janitor, they're everything. So they don't have time to go do a lot of analysis and kind of dig through data to decide on where they want to put their price or what new product they're going to offer or which customers to prioritize. The ones that seem to outperform and succeed, in the toughest times, their customers rallied around them, showed up like you or I did, ordering takeout from a restaurant probably twice a week during COVID, even though we'd have never ordered takeout from that place before. We like to dine there. We did it because we wanted to support them. We did it because they made an important impact on our lives and we recognized it and we did something about it. So drilling back to these guys who survived, what I saw was that they positioned themselves as unique to that customer base they served. And they really focused on the people that they were unique to, that they mattered to. So a simple way to put it, when they were making tough decisions or trying to go decide what to do and who to please, they focused on the ones that were close and core to them as opposed to the marginal next customer. A lot more loyalty this way. That's the positioning piece. Proximity is they made adjustments and they understood their community or the customers really well because they were often one of them or a part of that community. So they could make the decisions quickly and adjust faster than any kind of bigger business could. And then finally, purpose. Many of these businesses, their purpose was a little bit more shared by their customers or their stakeholders. It could have been as simple as saying, hey, it's an independent mom and pop store. And people just liked having that independent option. Or it could have been, it's a community hub, it's a community center where people wanted to keep it because it didn't just sell books and make money, but it also created a space for the community. But whatever that extra purpose was, it was recognized and valued by their customers. So those three things really helped a lot of these businesses not just kind of do okay, but really thrive when times got tough because the customers didn't
Yeah.
abandon them.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Speaking of, proximity, right? When we're in this digital kind of first world, right? I guess how do you see small businesses using that proximity kind of concept, whether it's like physical or emotional? How can they still use that as kind of that unfair advantage that you're talking about?
Well, that's the thing that's hard to replicate for anybody. And so the larger businesses are absolutely going to scale through digital, right? They're posting on social media, but it's a one-way speaker in many ways, right? For businesses to go reach out to their customers. The smaller businesses who have a set of customers, maybe they have a few thousand, but they have a smaller number of employees. Their employees or themselves are interacting with or having an impact on these individual customers far more frequently, with far more of a insight into how the customers are interacting. So simple proximity. If you're a local store, like know your town, know your people, talk to people when they come in. Easy enough, right? But even if you're not, even if you're maybe a small business who's online, who's got a very niche or a very specific set of products you're selling, well, you should know those customers well, maybe even talk to or engage with them through social media, or even go to or experience the types of things that they experience as well. Like you don't have to talk to them every day to be close to them. Talk to an importer who was really focused on one particular type of Japanese set of toys. Everybody who wants those toys know to go to his site, right? But does he know all these people? He knows a couple of them, but he goes to the same parts of Japan and he shares on social media the same kinds of things that they're doing with their lives, so that he's close to them. That proximity of like showing people that you know who they are or being one of them is pretty powerful.
Okay, yeah, that's great, man. What I love about your book too is I think your book is such a timely. I think it's a great time when you're bringing this to the ether, so to speak, to the awareness where people are at. Because what we're seeing, I think, more and more is that small brands and small niche influencers, so to speak, right? They're really driving, it's like the new economy, right? Whereas it used to be you had to be like a Google or an Apple to gain attention. But now you can just pick up your phone and have an Instagram channel, and people really can respect what they value your opinion. They want to tune into, Sri, they want to turn into Joel. They want to be a part of that. And so I love what you're saying, because I think this is going to be the kind of, you're going to be your own economy coming up, because with AI taking over, right, Sri, like you ain't going to have a job. So actually your job is, I think, going to be your brand,
Oh, absolutely.
and
Yeah,
every one of us is going to have a brand.
I think so. I
So how
think
do we stand out on our brand, which I think your book is really bringing to light?
Yeah, I think you'll find that it allows you to embrace who you are, right? And if you're going to be an independent business and you now have access to AI to amplify the things that you love and care about, what I found, at least in the work that I did, was that businesses that actually are more authentic, who just kind of doubled down on what they believed in, found an audience or found a customer base. And you see this, I think you do see this in the digital economy pretty well, is if you can just be yourself, people will actually appreciate that. And maybe that's enough. You're going to have a big audience or a small audience, but whatever the size of the audience is, there's a depth of relationship that you're able to have that nobody else can have. Embracing that and actually, leaning into it is what the book is about. Now, I'll say, because just before you dive in to just go be yourself and go do whatever you feel like and think it's going to turn into a business, I'll say that, the small business owners that we worked with, they worked really, really hard to kind of build what they built. But the ones that were really comfortable in their own skin, right, and kind of committed to who they were and what their principles were the ones that really stood out. And that comes with kind of belief and passion in what you're doing, but also there has to be a market. So, before I encourage everybody to jump ship, we may all lose our jobs to AI soon, but I'd flip it around and say, you know what? Now you can build a business on top of it, right? So you can do so much more, because now you don't have to pound out all of your emails, right, to go and ask for help or start your business. You can leverage AI. You can start to use it for doing your social media posting. If that's something as a business owner you don't like, there's a lot of value in what that AI is doing for you. I think it'll actually enable more individuals to become entrepreneurs and bring whatever it is that they're passionate about to the world.
Okay, this is so good too that we were talking about, and I heard Gary Vee even talk about this. He said being an entrepreneur is hard. He's like, it's not easy to make $1 million. He's like, it seems that way nowadays just because it's so ubiquitous on social media, like we're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's still very difficult. He's like, do not get it twisted.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure you've seen this, through your research and your own experience. So what do you feel is like kind of the number one lie, so to speak, about entrepreneurship that kills a lot of these new founders?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I think there's something called, I'm a data scientist by trade. So there's something called selection bias or survivor bias. So people will be out there looking at all these entrepreneurs and say, look at how many of them I see that have made tons of money and been super successful. And then of course, look at how many of them like stepped out of the shower, put on their socks and then became a millionaire after that, right? Somehow like people are getting there so quick and so easy, it must be possible and easy. The number one lie is you can pick whatever you're excited about and passionate about and turn into money. No. The reason you get advice and the reason what we see in that passion, right? The reason you hear about that so much is that your passion has to be so powerful that it overcomes years and years of challenges. You don't pick it just because you love it. No. You pick it because you love it so much that you're willing to overcome 100 no's and a bunch of failures and work 2 other jobs if you have to get the one thing that you do love off the ground. Like, it's not about start it up, it's easy, it's going to go. It's not about the examples you see that get celebrated. Those are like the people who win the lottery. You want to be successful, you have to really be willing to go fight for that thing that you're passionate about, which is why it was really clear. We have this 10-year mark in some of our analysis. If a business has made it 10 years, right, it's going to last. And it's going to last because somebody has survived at least 2 major economic disasters, right, in the decade. So you look at this thing and you say, well, 10 years, like how do you do it? Every single one of the owners I've talked to who's made that 10-year mark, it's because they love it too much to let it die. They love what they do too much to let it die. So, the thing I would say, it's not exactly a lie to tell people that if you're really passionate about something, you successfully make it into a business. It's that your passion has to be so strong, it's going to overcome a lot of the challenges that every business owner faces. Everyone faces. I'm sure, Joel, you probably saw this too when you were getting started. There's way more reasons to say, maybe I should go back to something I know versus this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
there's probably even days today where you're at a certain level of success and it's really difficult to get to that next thing that you want to do. But because you love it so much, because you care about it so much, you keep trying. That's the passion that comes through.
Yeah. But it's so funny. Like you said, passion is great, but passion doesn't mean you make money. So you need money.
No,
You need
exactly.
liquidation. You need to be able to survive, right? You got to put food on the table. I was just thinking too, though, where obviously, yes. And I know one of the big arguments in the book is that being too small to scale, it can actually be the superpower, right?
Oh, totally.
But I was also thinking, yeah, and what you said is, yeah, we rallied behind a lot of these businesses, but a lot of those businesses also we saw didn't survive the recession, like the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? Whereas Amazon and a lot of these other big businesses were actually incentivized, right? The Walmarts, I think the government was like subsidizing them. So they were like being held up while mom and pops were not. So, it's like a flip, right? Like, how do you
So
see
brutal.
that too?
I was at a lender, and we were pretty big and we had good connections. We got invited to go and have conversations with the folks who were shaping up the PPP program. If you're not familiar with PPP, it was a paycheck protection program where they wanted to get businesses, small businesses specifically, something to float by on over the course of the lockdown, so that they could stay in business, keep paying their employees, and do whatever. In the design, they told us what the incentives were going to be. No larger than like a $10 million loan, and if it's a $10 million loan, the person who's issuing the loan, they'll only get to earn 2% on that. But if it's smaller than like $50,000 or smaller than $100,000, you can earn 5% on that. So they wanted to give some incentive to kind of be even, et cetera. And then they said, okay, here's all the paperwork you're going to need. You got to prove A, B, C, and D. And my first inclination when I saw that was, wait a minute, what's $10 million times 2% versus $50,000 times 5%? $10 million every time. Like, you would never put any work in to go get the few $100 you're going to get for helping a small business. But for the business that doesn't really need the 10 million, that already has all their paperwork in a row, right? Go to them. First thing I said, I see these plans is it's going to go all to the big guys. You're going to run out of money on all these bigger businesses that aren't the ones that you're trying to help, right? That aren't going to be letting go of their jobs or any of that stuff. But then the small guys, they're going to like struggle to get the paperwork ready. They're going to struggle to get to the bank, and by the time they get to the bank's busy making money hand over fist on these other guys. They're not going to bother with them. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened in that first tranche. And while a number of other business leaders like me voiced those concerns, I think that at the moment it was all about just get this thing out there, get money out into the economy. They did do a second round, and they fixed some of the problems, and they kind of created the right incentives in the second round. But yeah, the government really didn't help for those 6 months that those small businesses were hurt the most. It wasn't until the next year, 21, that the programs came out and enough money came out to the ones who really needed it still.
Yeah. So I guess what I would ask too, in your background, what do you see for businesses in the future, right? Not knowing what's going to happen, but you even mentioned over 10 years, there's usually probably two recessions.
Yeah.
So, and having worked with thousands of small businesses, I guess, what are, some of the moves that we need to be aware of if we're a small business? Like, what are those first 2 to 3 moves that, you think every founder should actually make so that they can be resilient, they can be profitable even in these downturns?
So there's a handful of kind of, I'd call them smart financial setup that one can do. Cash is one of the biggest problems, right? Especially during a downturn, cash is a constraint. I'm not going to go lecture anybody on making sure they have enough cash in the bank to survive a downturn, because I know the data, I've seen it. Rarely any American small business, if you're less than 10 million in revenue, there's no way you have enough cash in the bank to survive a meaningful downturn. It's always something else that matters to keep you alive. So what I experienced in looking at this, and actually it wasn't just the COVID pandemic that hit a lot of these businesses. There's other ups and downs. We had the supply chain shocks right before them. We had inflation hit. We had a number of different things happening throughout the last 15 years to see the businesses that could count on their customers. Businesses whose customers felt that they were too important to lose. Those are the ones that really survived in a number of different ways. But I would say, first of all, if you're a small business owner, don't expect the government to come in and help you. It'd be silly if I said that, but I just want to call that out. So there will be a challenge. We're seeing tariffs today kind of challenging a lot. We're seeing potentially some recession, there's really major labor issues these days. I know a lot of small business owners are having a hard time finding folks at an affordable cost. So what I would be advising is be really close to your community and your customers, and know what they want and know what they're going through. Because as you do, you can quickly make adjustments to cut back on things that you can't afford or can't be offering, you can't make money off of. Or if you have to set higher prices, or if you have to change your business practices, you're going to have to make those adjustments really quickly. All right. And it comes from that proximity you have to your customers to know what they need at the time of these challenges. Again, when you see these challenges and when you see these issues, they're happening locally just as much, and they're happening more acutely locally than they are nationally or globally. So when those changes happen, if you can adjust to them along with the people that you serve, you'll be in a better place during that tougher time, because they'll be there with you.
It's so good what you're saying, and it makes sense, right? We were talking before we jumped on. We were talking about that Kevin Kelly article a long time ago, 1,000 true fans, right? If you have 1,000 true raving fans, or was it like 100? I can't remember what he said. I think it was
raving fans versus a huge set of customers.
Yeah, 1,000 raving fans versus 10,000 followers or whatever. As long as you have 1,000 core people, you will always have a profitable business, was kind of what he was saying. That's all you need. And moving into this, again, more digital world, more AI, I think community is going to be more and more important than ever. And you just said it. You just said, yeah, you better be in touch with your community. So I guess, what have you seen successful businesses do? Like, what are they doing? Are Are they out grassroots? Are they mailing thank you cards? Are they like taking polls and trying to like always like be engaged? I don't know. Have you seen like successful businesses where you see kind of common threads of like how they maintain that community?
Well, I see maintaining and participating as a common thread, but how they do it's very unique to the communities that they're part of. Uh, take the martial arts studio I just visited recently. They're in there sponsoring events. They're getting tickets to and shows at kind of local high schools. They're promoting what they do, especially at schools that don't have a sports capability, right? And they're plugged in. They're giving people an option. They're getting close to the community in one way. There's also, I got the story in the book. It was years ago. I met a small business owner while I was out. I don't know. I was out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and there wasn't really any place to eat. I get to my hotel, which is kind of far out in the middle of nowhere as well, and I'm in the line to get to the front desk to check in. And the guy in front of me is actually a small business owner. He owns a restaurant that is, maybe 15 miles away, but in the vicinity based on where I was. I think it was like Castroville, really far away from anything. And I chat with him because I thought he was in line. He didn't have a suitcase, and I'm like, "Oh, are you checking in?" He goes, "No, no, no. I'm here to give free dinners to the front desk." So he goes to the front desk, gives these two folks at the front desk, free dinners, like tickets to free dinners or whatever, so they can go out and come to his restaurant and eat it. And of course, what's he really doing? He's marketing. He's got now advocates at the one place where people are staying within 15 miles of his restaurant, so that they'll say, "Oh no, there's this great place. It's a little bit away, blah blah blah." But sure enough, knowing his area, knowing his community, he's got it plugged in. The best examples I heard about community were the bookstores, right? People are always, you talk about how Amazon's just growing and online is beating everybody. I think that's true, and the kind of book reselling industry has been under constant pressure for decades now. And somehow there are still so many thriving bookstores across the country, and their formulas are all different from one another, but they're all plugged in with their community. They all have events. They all bring people together for different things or different interests or different purposes, which is what makes these stores unique. But staying connected, just by knowing what people are up to or being a center for the things you care about, there are a whole bunch of different ways to do it. But if the community doesn't know who you are, or if the people in the community don't see you as important in their lives, they're not going to rally around you if you need them. But they will if they think you're important in their lives.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Is that kind of like along the same concept when you're talking about, forget about scaling, guys, like just build strength. Is this what that rooted that principle that you're talking
Exactly.
about? Like,
It's about strength.
Kind of
It's about build
aspect?
strength. Yeah. And that's what you need to survive 10 years. You need strength first, right? To make it that long. You're going to get tested multiple times.
Yeah, where do you see the founders too? Where do you see that they're skipping steps because are they just not trying to build strength because they're just trying to do like what Google and Amazon are doing? So they're trying to go to the scaling kind of market. Like,
Well, the thing that
what do you see most common?
I mentor entrepreneurs who are looking for the kind of maybe not the moonshot, but the big scalable ideas. I think they're in a different. I put them in a different pool, somewhat of the small business owner. But I will say the steps that they skip are really recognizing who they are and the kind of leader they are and the kinds of things that they can sustain as a founder. So building a business around your personality, your strengths, kind of the things that you want to pursue and enjoy. Again, it's about lasting, right? It's tough. You got to put it all together. You got to pound it out. And there's 100,000 reasons to quit just in your first year. And if you're not built around your strength, if you're not pursuing something that you're passionate, you're not going to make it, right? The examples that we all kind of look at and revere, they'll all tell you how difficult and challenging it was. And we all know that they kind of overcome a ton of things. But a lot of times it's hard to see all of that and how much they had to overcome. There's so many more people who had the Facebook idea than Zuckerberg before he did it, right? There's so many more people who are out there building these tools and building technology that just don't make it. And it's because they couldn't get past the 20th or the 30th or the 50th no, right? But people who could did it because they built their business around their strengths. They kind of persevered through real challenges. So, when I do a lot of mentorship and coaching for entrepreneurs who are really starting their business and trying to found a business, my advice is, look, doing it alone is really, really hard. Got to get co-founders or team members because it commits you to lasting longer. Like doing it as a team, it's a lot harder to give up on your team than it is just to give up on your silly idea. Because if you founded something and gave up on it, it's easy to just say, hey, I tried and moved on. But if you get something bigger, you bring more people involved, and then you get the people who complement your strengths. Know what your strength is. If you're really good at sales, you're really good at an idea, if you're good at building a product, go get people around you who can do the other pieces. Because you need a business that kind of works to everybody's strengths.
Dude, that's so critical. Doing the inner work, right? It's what you're saying. And like, you better be bulletproof mindset, right? I'm sure there's so many people then when you're consulting them and working with them one-on-one, it's like, you probably say like, this may not be for you.
Oh my goodness.
Like, you don't,
yeah. Or, hey, put the
or
book
you need,
down.
or maybe you could do it, right? Like you said, but you're going to you need a partner. I love what you said about the team part.
Yeah.
Because going in as a solopreneur can be really, it's a bumpy road.
It's tough. Like when you get a book and you read about it and you listen to all these great ideas, I think there's so much great knowledge and ideas and advice out there. And I don't want to tell anybody, don't listen to it. It's really good advice. But if you can't figure out who you are, following somebody else's advice isn't going to get you to where you want to go, right? You got to go and include the internal work as part of following the formulas that you read in these books. I find a bunch of them fascinating, and I really, they really resonate with me. But my approach has never been by the book. It's always been go figure out what works for me and take from what you can learn from the book. It's right for on average, but you're not an average person. You're a unique individual.
Yeah. Dude, talk about, and I think this is all kind of what we've been chatting about, but talk about the underdog mindset, because it's something we hear a lot, especially in the entrepreneurship. But, again, it's like what you're talking about. It's different to, like David Goggins, and we can all rally behind an idea or a concept or read that book, Founders, and look how Elon Musk, like he was $200 away from PayPal, and when they were creating that, before they were practically bankrupt, and then they got that turned around last minute. And again, these are motivational. We love that, but it's the odds can get stacked upon us. So I guess, how do people stay? What have you noticed in staying in that underdog mindset, and how does that look like so that we can embrace it and not be a victim?
So this is one where I kind of cover this in purpose a little bit. This is one where I ask people to, come back and check in and realign with whatever their real purpose is. So yes, I'm doing this because I want to make a bunch of money is fine as a purpose. You're unmoored, unfortunately, if you're saying, hey, my one purpose is just make money and make something big. Not typically, almost everybody I've talked to who's made it past a certain level of success will say, no, I had a couple of things in mind. Even if it's as simple as saying, I wanted to be my own boss, to I wanted to go introduce this one product or food or flavor to a broader group of people, but kind of locking in on that purpose and then reevaluating for yourself. Are you still pursuing that purpose? Either have you veered off track from what you said you want to do, or has your kind of life changed to a level where, no, it's no longer about me just being my boss, but now I've got to provide for my family. Or maybe it's, I thought it was about me being my own boss, but now I want more respect, or I want this, or I want that. Like, go and reevaluate what it is you're really trying to get out of the business, and do it on a regular basis. In fact, you think big corporations, they do strategy planning every year, maybe sometimes once a quarter. They'll get like the executives do a retreat and think big picture, think strategy, right? It's discipline. It's internal work as you described it. But even for any founder or entrepreneur, you have to double check and say, like, what is it that I'm really trying to do? One of the most common things that I hear from people when they're founding a company or starting something is, even if I fail, it's going to be good because I'll be able to tell people what I did, and people like, people who've been entrepreneurs. I say, by the way, that's BS. failure itself isn't the thing. It's you learned something, you grew, you have something to show for it, right? Go put something down that says, hey, I'm going to build this thing. And if nobody buys it, it'll still be of value because I can show people I built this, or I learned something along the way in building it, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. Be a little bit more specific, right? Be a little bit more thoughtful about what it is that you're going to get from it. Because after a certain point in time, for example, I've met a number of folks who kind of gotten stuck in this path, said, hey, look, people are going to value me for starting something, etc. But then, even if it fails, I'll have done something. Well, they're going to get to a place in 6 months where they built something, they got the thing that they said they're going to go do. They still don't have any customers. They're struggling, but their heart's not in it anymore, and they can't figure out why, right? Well, here's why. You built something, nobody wants it, or you don't know how to sell it, or you don't like selling it. So figure out, is it you keep going, you're no longer going to get the pat on the back that says, hey, you built something. So what else are you looking for? That you were able to sell? Well, then what are you spending all your time navel gazing? Go and sell as hard as you can, because that's something you want to prove to somebody, prove to yourself. But that doesn't happen unless you actually take the time to step back and reflect and say, what am I doing this for? And not just profit, not just, hey, I want to have a company behind me. You were clear jumping into this whole idea, especially on the solopreneur. You were clear that, hey, look, I'm going to do this because I think it's going to be valuable down the road, even if I fail. Well, then how is it valuable? You have to remind yourself, what are you doing in the next 6 months or next 3 months that's going to make you more valuable than what you've already done so far?
Wow. Yeah. This is huge because and what you're talking about is, if you don't have a really clear why, right? Like you said, if your why is to make a lot of money, and don't get me wrong, there's times where, maybe we're in a crunch and we need to make money. That is the objective, right? But like you said, you could build something great and it make no money, and then you're done because that was your why. Yeah. But if your why was like, I'm going to grow from this and I can create still a beautiful product, like the product might be great. It just needs to be tweaked, right? Yeah. But you might be done because your why was just attached to the money.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
like
key.
That's the Simon Sinek, what's your why is another one where when you get people to just reconnect with your why, really what I advocate is just reconnecting with it and be willing to either adapt it because you've changed or come back to it because you lost sight of it for a little while. But you could go either
That's what
way.
I wanted to ask you. Sri, what's your process or framework to doing that? Do you have your own process, or do you recommend entrepreneurs, like, is it a quarterly thing? Like, hey man, like do this exercise, like check in with your why, or anything like that?
I do have it. It's kind of laid out in the book, not directly as a, hey, here's a process you have to follow, but a set of questions you should ask yourself. I can't fathom sneaking in more than once a year to a small business owner to think about this stuff. Maybe they could do it more often if they could find the time, but they're always busy. They're always chasing.
Yeah, good point.
For a founder, while they are a solopreneur, you got to probably do this every couple of months. If you're trying to start something and you don't have momentum, you've got to go back and find whatever it is that's going to motivate you to get that momentum. And as the momentum builds, you either got a bunch of customers or you're starting to hire people, et cetera, then maybe you can take a step back from checking the direction you're going, but it's a couple of months, I would say. Or, get a coach, right? Get an executive coach who you talk to on probably a monthly basis or maybe a quarterly basis. Have a steering committee you send out this information to, but the internal piece, the why, you definitely want a coach who's not talking to you about the business, but talking to you about you and your leadership. Mm-hmm. Or, the do-it-yourself is great. There's a set of prescribed questions I can give you. I keep it online if anyone wants to go download it. Questions that you can just ask yourself to say, like, what am I doing that's going to get me to where I want to go? What do I value? Why did I start this? Is that still the reason I'm here? And they all will then fit back into everything from what's your product to what's your pricing to, how do I market? They do fit. They all connect back together. But it starts with what are your few principles?
Yeah. So critical, dude. I love this. This is powerful. Dude, talk about I want to wrap things up here. We covered a lot of ground. I where can people, the book's coming out soon, Unconvention, a small business strategy guide. Talk about where people can either connect with you, like where are you most active? I know you're on TikTok doing a lot of dances. I'm just kidding. Sri's definitely not on TikTok doing a lot of dances, but
Right.
are you on LinkedIn? Where can people either connect with you, either offline or sorry, online,
Yeah.
or at your website, and then talk about the book when it launches and where people can
Yeah.
go
So,
support
I
and,
post a
and
bit
learn
to
about it.
LinkedIn, but the book is going to be available pretty much anywhere books are sold. Amazon's going to have it. Barnes& Noble's going to have it. It'll be in the Books a Million stores. So it's a pretty widely available book. And I've got a website if people want to go check that out. It's sri-kaza.com. Post some blog, talk about small business and how like current events are impacting small businesses there. But I would encourage anybody to go there to just download the primer on the three underdog principles, learn a little bit more about it, think about their own business. The book, if you're interested, it's a bunch of great stories about small businesses and a little bit more detail on how to apply these principles. I put in that book my favorite McKinsey and MBA business school frameworks. So there's a bunch of other people's really good work, uh, but that really good work usually only applies to big companies. Here, what I've done is kind of laid out all these different strategic frameworks that I've used in the past with big companies, explained how they work at big companies, and then talk about what I found the small business owners I saw doing, applying essentially the same. They play by the same rules. It's business, right? But they apply their underdog principles, and they can find ways to win in those strategies, in those frameworks that the big businesses couldn't ever pursue. So all of that, you find that in the book, or I post about it on my blog as well.
Yeah, killer. And I can't recommend the book enough. I think, especially with just kind of the way we're seeing things shift from just like I said, the economy. You're going to be your own economy, I think, more or less. And we're there's just with AI and everything coming upon us. You better know these strategies if you want to last, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
love that you wrote the book, brother, and all the work that you're doing. Go out and support Sri Kaza. Amazing stuff. The book Unconvention. Go get it. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Joel. It was great being on.